Hello, my name is Cam Gandhi, Executive Director of the Arizona State Board of Pharmacy. Today I'm here to talk to you about the Arizona Pharmacy Law. Before we begin, I want to congratulate all the new graduates. A disclaimer, I do not write the exam, nor do I review the exam, and I have no financial incentive for this presentation. Before we get into the pharmacy law, I want to go over the application process, the history of the Board of Pharmacy, our profile of how many licenses we manage, and so forth. And we'll jump right into the pharmacy law. The application is the first step to your journey to becoming a pharmacist. There are two applications you must fill out to be considered for licensure. The first is through the NABP website. You need to fill out the NABP application to qualify to put in your name to take the NAPLEX and the MPJE. After you submit that application, you need to apply with the Arizona State Board of Pharmacy for their application for you to be considered to be licensed. The Board of Pharmacy initiated a new process allowing NABP to release you to test upon submission of an application prior to the Arizona Board of Pharmacy reviewing your application. Please note that if you take and pass an NAPLEX exam and the MPJE exam, it doesn't automatically entitle you to be licensed as a pharmacist if you have an incomplete application or if you haven't submitted an application. You need to have a complete application or have submitted an application to be considered to be licensed. The turnaround period for the Board of Pharmacy to review your application is 8 weeks. So we ask for your patience as we process your application and get you licensed as quickly as possible. I cannot emphasize enough to you that please submit a complete application. An incomplete application submission will just result in further delays for you. I know you have interns. You all have your intern licenses. You've all submitted your documents during the intern licensure process. But please note that applying for a pharmacist license is a new application, and you need to resubmit all those documents that you submitted for intern license and anything new that's transpired during the process as far as criminal history or name change or anything of that nature needs all to be submitted again. The Arizona Board of Pharmacy was enacted in April 28, 1903, when Arizona was still a territory. Arizona became a state in 1913, April 13, 1912, where the Board of Pharmacy became more structured. The MPJE consists of 120 questions. It uses adaptive technology to deliver selected response questions. Exams will be reported as a pass or fail, and no numerical value will be given out. Exam is 2.5 hours. There's a link to the NABP website detailing the NAPLEX exam as well as the MPJE exam and the rules that you must follow. It is a computer-based exam, as stated earlier, so you can't omit or skip a question. Can't go back and review a question, and can't change an answer once you have confirmed it and moved on to the next question. This next bullet point is really important, guys and gals. If for some reason you have to step away from your computer station while you're taking the exam for whatever reason, please do not pull out your cell phone, and please do not engage in dialogue other than the facilitator there that's monitoring your activity as you take the exam. The mission of the board. The board has one mission, and one mission only, is to protect the residents of Arizona from individuals that practice pharmacy, that manufacture drugs and devices, and that distribute drugs and devices. How does the Board of Pharmacy enforce its rules and regulations, and how do you know how to practice pharmacy in a safe way? There are statutes and rules governing the Board of Pharmacy. There's also the federal code, which is the federal law that governs what you can and can't do. Statutes are the framework and foundation of all the laws in the state of Arizona. It is passed by the legislators and signed by the governor. Statutes, if written completely, can stand on its own. There is a little YouTube video link that I put into this page that gives you a brief overview in a comic way of how bill becomes a law, and this is how it's played out in the real world. Regulations are a result of statute. Please note that regulations typically cannot stand on its own without a statute. It is discussed and passed by the board after being considered by the industry and general public. The Board of Pharmacy members, staff, there are 9 members to the Board of Pharmacy, 6 pharmacists, 1 being a hospital pharmacist and 1 being a community pharmacist. The remaining 4 can be a mix and match of any discipline. There are 2 public members and 1 certified pharmacy technicians. Please read the qualifications to be a board member for your information. Board members are appointed by the governor, and they are able to serve up to 2 full term limits. Each term limit consists of 5 years. If for some reason a member does not want to run again, or the governor doesn't want to reappoint, they could serve 1 year, but they have the ability to serve 2 full years. Public members also have a 2-year term limit, and same with pharmacy technicians. Annually, the board has an election process to elect a president and vice president. Board staff starts off with myself being the executive director. I am a pharmacist, but I don't have to be to do this role. I am appointed, I'm voted in, I apologize. I serve at the pleasure of the board. So I go through the interview process and the board hires me. So this is my full-time job. Whereas going back to board members, this is a job that they do as a public service. Outside of being a board member, they have full-time jobs in the real world, in the private sector. Deputy director, which is Jennifer Gilnabong, she is a licensed pharmacist as well, and by statute, that position does require to be a pharmacist. Powers and duties of the board are listed here over the next several pages. Please read those. This PowerPoint presentation will be given to Barb to disseminate out to you guys so that you don't have to take notes at this time, but you will get this presentation for your review. Board meetings. The board can, by statute, must hold 4 meetings annually. Currently, we have 6 board meetings scheduled annually. And then we have task force meetings, emergency board meetings in the middle. So it does take up a considerable amount of time, investment for board members, time for board staff to put together these meetings. But at a minimum, the board must have 4 meetings annually. We do encourage individuals to attend a board meeting to see how the board works, to kind of get a grasp on pharmacy law and a better understanding of what your responsibility is. Please do not be invited to a board meeting if you're invited, not necessarily a good thing. There are something in statute that are exempted acts. Exempted acts means that, for instance, the medical board, medical practitioners, nurse practitioners, ODs, dentists, and so forth, they are exempt from dispensing and how they operate. They have their own jurisdiction. They have their own agency that oversees them. And so they are exempt from what we do. One function that you'll learn as you are a pharmacist, you are the gatekeeper of dispensing prescriptions. So you have the ability to use professional clinical judgment. You also have the ability to review a prescription. So if a physician writes a prescription outside of their scope of practice, you have the ability to question that prescription and then make a clinical decision on whether to fill it or not. We do have an eye chart posted on our website for your review. Please take a look at it. Please memorize it, understand it, and because I believe there may be a few questions on the exam pertaining to that. Licensing of individuals by the pharmacy board. We license individuals through the full licensure exam process, which includes taking the NAPLEX and MPJE. We license individuals doing a reciprocity process, which means they were pharmacists in a different state and they're trying to move to Arizona to be licensed here. In that case, we would transfer their license here through NAVP, but they will still be required to take the law exam in this state to practice in the state. There is something to note. NAPLEX and MPJE, you can take up to 5 times. You can take it up to 3 times at your discretion on your time. The 4th time, you do have to submit an action plan, which is reviewed by myself and may be approved by me for you to take it the 4th time. The 5th time requires a board appearance. Hopefully none of you have to come to this point, but 5th is the last time that you're allowed to take the exam, NAPLEX or MPJ in this state. 5th time is the last time you can do that. Question. The board may consist of 5 community pharmacists, 1 hospital pharmacist, 2 public members, and I didn't write on here, but 1 pharmacy technician. The answer would be true. So as I indicated earlier, 5 community pharmacists, 1 of them has to be community, the other can be mix and match, or it can be all community pharmacists. 1 hospital pharmacist is a requirement by statute, 2 public members, and of course, something I didn't put on this slide is 1 pharmacy technician. Question, true or false? A medical doctor that wants to dispense prescription needs to have a pharmacy permit. And the answer is false. Medical doctors have their own authority under their own statutes to be able to dispense medications. It does align with the Pharmacy Practice Act that we have in this state. And so a lot of what they need to do aligns with what we have to do. Licensing and permits. Currently, the Board of Pharmacy manages about 43,000 licenses and permits. Licensure by reciprocity, I think I've already discussed that earlier. Pharmacy technicians may not work as a pharmacy technicians. Actually, nobody can practice pharmacy in Arizona without having an open, active pharmacy technician, pharmacist, pharmacy intern, technicians, or technician trainee license. Without that license, you're not allowed to practice pharmacy. Requirements to be a pharmacy technician: 18 years old, high school diploma, or GED. The license renewal process is the initial license is good for up to 2 years, not all the way up to 2 years, but close to 2 years. Everything going forward after that is a 2-year renewal cycle for pharmacists and pharmacy technicians. Interns have a one-time 5-year license. They're allowed an additional year if for some reason their school was delayed or something happened where they need an extra year to complete their education. Pharmacy technician trainees are not eligible for renewal. They have the ability to have a one-time license for 36 months, so 3 years. These are requirements for pharmacist CEs. They are required to have 30 hours of CE. The breakdown for what they need to do is itemized here. It's also posted on our website. A pharmacy technician can work without a physical presence of a pharmacist at a remote dispensing pharmacy. And the answer is true. How long do I need to keep my CE records? The answer is 5 years. Discipline versus non-discipline. Disciplinary action by a pharmacist to a pharmacist license. Grounds for discipline includes fraudulent, obtaining a license through fraudulent means, convicted of a felony, found by the board to be guilty of gross immorality. Sorry. The license reports for duty under the influence of alcohol or drugs. License is addicted to alcohol or drugs to render the license unfit in the opinion of the board to practice profession of the pharmacy. The list goes on and on. I'll leave this for you guys to review. Disciplinary action to a pharmacist license. Again, there's a list for you to review when you get this presentation. So the way a complaint process works with the Board of Pharmacy is a complaint can come through a number of different ways. It can come through from a patient, it can come through another professional, it can come through any means, law enforcement, insurance groups complaining about a pharmacist. So complaints come through all different mechanisms, all different types of individuals. The Board of Pharmacy roughly gets about 800 complaints annually. The board of staff works up the case through interview process, pulling data from pharmacies and so forth, and then presenting that case to the board. The board has the opportunity to dismiss the complaint, call a conference for further discussion regarding whatever occurred, and or give a consent agreement to the individual for either CE, civil penalty, or so forth. Consent agreement is just that. It has to be agreed between two parties. If the two parties cannot agree, it can go to a hearing where the board is issuing an order versus an agreement between two parties. Just a friendly reminder for you guys, it is to update your address and or other contact information, update place of employment. If you are charged for criminal activity, inform the board within 10 days. Failure to report and update this information may result in a permanent discipline on your license and a fine of up to $1,000 per incident. Non-disciplinary civil penalty became a law in 2021. That is ARS 321904D. Rules package was effective May 9, 2022. Violations not related to public safety. So the board has the ability to issue a non-disciplinary civil penalty for administrative type issues. For instance, what I indicated below, change of address, change of contact information, change of employment, those can be considered administrative functions that someone has failed to comply with and could be subject to non-disciplinary, but if it's a repeat offense, then it could be subject to a disciplinary action. Cases board discuss: non-permitted, non-licensed individuals compounding, fraud-like activity, diversion and distribution of controlled drugs. As of recent, we are seeing an uptick in diversion and distribution of controlled drugs. I'm not sure what the cause is for that spike, but we are seeing an increased activity regarding that. For more information on the MPJE, it comprises of federal and state law. So make sure you take notes or identify what is state, what is not state, what is federal, what is not federal. The board, the exam questions you'll be held responsible for knowing both the federal and the state law and be able to differentiate the two when the questions are asked. So with all professions and stuff, pharmacy has evolved a long ways. From when I started to now has changed considerably. So it is very important to know how we got to where we got to. Some notable things in our history is Food and Drug Cosmetic Act of 1938, Durham-Humphrey Amendment of 1951, Kefauver-Harris Amendment of 1962. That is one of my favorite amendments. It's a great story to read for those that are interested. I would recommend reading that one. Medical Device Amendment of 1976. and the Orphan Drug Act of 1983. These two terms here on this slide are absolutely critical for you guys to understand. I've identified the ARS 32-1966 and ARS 32-1967 for your review. Adulteration and misbranding. Throughout the history of pharmacy, adulteration and misbranding has always been talked about. It is something that you should know on the back of your hand. Other provisions of the FTCA and federal regulations, advertising, promotion of prescription drugs, special warning requirements, the FDA Orange Book, compounding versus manufacturing. How do you calculate an NDC number? How do you, what 5 codes, the first 5 codes represent, what the middle 4 codes represent, what the last 2 codes represent is absolutely critical. How do you calculate the DA number? Is something that you need to know about. Poison Prevention Packaging Act. Definitely read that handbook. I have the link below on this website. And I'll give you a great example. Sublingual nitroglycerin, as stated on this slide, is absolutely critical to not have a safety cap on that medication, because if you're experiencing a heart attack, it's difficult to open a childproof container to take a nitroglycerin. That medication should be readily available, easily accessible in an event someone is having a heart attack. So that's one example of this Poison Prevention Packaging Act exemption. So please know the exemption, the drugs that are in that group, that does not require a child-resistant cap. Federal and Arizona Controlled Substance Act. Corresponding responsibility. If you, as interns, have practiced in a pharmacy and senior pharmacists scrutinize a prescription, question a prescription, they are doing what their responsibility is to that prescription. And if they're not, they're violating their corresponding responsibility. Corresponding responsibility is basically pharmacist has the same responsibility to that prescription to dispenses as the prescriber has to write that prescription. Classifications of schedules. Scheduling of compounded controlled substances. Must be compounded within 1 or more non-narcotic therapeutic ingredient to be Schedule 3, otherwise it's Schedule 2. So please know the rules and regulations around the drugs that are in what category, Schedule 1, 2, 3, or 4. We do follow the federal code as far as their schedules, so please take a look at that. When you compound a medication, how does it become a Schedule 2? How does it become a Schedule 3? Please review that process. There is also a Category 6 medication, which is pseudoephedrine-based medications, which I did not list on that slide. The DA registration, general information exemptions, practitioners' use of hospital DA numbers. Is that allowed or not allowed? Please read up on that. Registration for military personnel, activities requiring separate registration, and verifying a DA registration. How do you order a Schedule 1 and a Schedule 2 medications? A lot of things are automated these days. There is a process where if automation does fail, that you are able to still order a medication that the patient needs using a DEA Form 222. There is a DEA pharmacist manual that I would encourage you all to download, take a look at. It's about 120, 130 pages, written in layman terms. I would advise strongly that you memorize that forward and backward, upside down, backward, sideways, every which way possible. Other DA forms for you to consider is DA 106, that is lost or stolen prescriptions, controlled substances, sorry. DA 41 is the destruction of controlled substances and how to document it properly. Storage records, on-site versus remote, inventories on May 1st or as directed by the board. RX records, 2 years by the DEA, 7 years by the Arizona State Board of Pharmacy, and invoices, 2 years by DEA, 3 years by the Arizona State Board of Pharmacy. Dispensing controlled substance prescriptions, general, Schedule 2 prescriptions, see state restrictions on all opioids. The initial prescription can be written for only 5 days if it's for initial therapy. There's exceptions to if a pain specialist writes those medications or if it's an invasive procedure, there's different guidelines for that. So please be aware of how many Schedule 2 prescription tablets can be written on the prescription. Schedule 3 to Schedule 5 prescriptions, OTC sales of Schedule 5 prescriptions, prescribing and dispensing of narcotic drugs. These are all things that you do need to memorize and know. And as I stated earlier, it is all itemized and listed in the Pharmacist DEA manual. Again, we had the ability to review the eye chart earlier regarding independent prescriptive authority, physicians, dentists, podiatrists, veterinarians, nurse practitioners, naturopathic physicians, homeopathic physicians. So again, reiterating, it is the pharmacist's responsibility to be the gatekeeper on what is being dispensed out of a pharmacy. And then to question anything that looks kind of awkward, kind of weird. If it's out of scope of a physician, it's your job to question it. So these are some of the responsibilities you have as future pharmacists. Out-of-state and foreign practitioners. Arizona's definition of practitioner includes person licensed in other states and also those in other countries in the healthcare field who can legally prescribe drugs in that jurisdiction. So one of the questions that comes up is, I received a prescription from let's say a doctor in Canada. Am I allowed to fill that prescription here? And there's two parts to that question. The first part is it a controlled substance or is it a non-controlled substance? If it's a controlled substance, then no, you cannot fill it as a pharmacist and you cannot fill it in this country because they don't have a DEA registration. If it's a non-controlled medication, you can fill it in this state, in this country, because of the statutes and rules around record keeping, around the fact that can you identify that physician is an actual physician. That's going to be hard to do. But that's something that's a responsibility of the pharmacist to do. But the answer to a non-control medication is yes, you can fill it in this country. What is a designated agent? A designated agent is a person designated by a practitioner as authorized to communicate prescription drug orders to a pharmacist. If you have worked in a pharmacy, you have probably spoken to a nurse, a medical assistant, or someone from a doctor's office that has been given the authority to transcribe a prescription to you on behalf of the physician or authorize refills or clarify a prescription that you may have. Maybe licensed nurse, physician's assistant, pharmacist, or any other individual the practitioner designates. Please understand and read the definitions as in 32-1901-01 and A.A.C. R423-110. There's a lot of definitions you need to know and understand. A lot of them are common sense definitions, but there are some nuances. Please at least take a look and understand them. Pharmacists and intern duties. There's a lot of overlapping duties that interns and pharmacists have. One thing to remember is a pharmacist has the final say and has supervision authority over anybody working under that pharmacist, meaning interns, pharmacy technicians, pharmacy technician trainees, clerks, even. Oral consultation, aka patient counseling, must be performed by a pharmacist or pharmacy interns, required in community retail pharmacies and from hospital pharmacists when a patient is discharged. So counseling in this state is a pharmacist's responsibility. It's for pharmacists to accept the okay to counsel, the pharmacy to accept a denial of counsel. It's not a technician duty. It's not a technician trainee duty. It is a pharmacist's responsibility. The guidelines and the minimum counseling requirements are listed in the rules package in our regulations section of our pharmacy law book. So please take a look at that. Duties for pharmacy technician is outlined here in the next few slides. Last year, latter part of last year, the board passed a rules package and passed by the governor's rules regulating committee to authorize pharmacists to delegate any task that is not a clinical task or professional judgment decision task to a technician, meaning that if a doctor's office phoned in a prescription for a non-controlled substance, you as a pharmacist can delegate that task to a pharmacy technician, not a pharmacy technician trainee, but a pharmacy technician that has been trained to be able to do that function. They are also allowed to speak to physicians on refills and so forth, get some clarification. But again, it has to be non-clinical functions that you can delegate those things to. Permitting of pharmacies and other facilities. The use of the word pharmacy or non-permitted is not permitted unless the place is a licensed pharmacy. The intent of this law is to not confuse patients in going into a facility where they may think they're getting health care of some sort. So it is something that's out there that folks are using pharmacy in on their building as a business address or business designation to lure patients to come in, and then they're offering some service that's not related to pharmacy. The board requires a biannual registration of pharmacies, separate permit required for each location. Permit is not transferable if a change of location or change of name. Must file a new application before engaging in activity. The board has since changed that rule. Change of location, we have a change of address form, which is not a requirement of a new application. We also have a name change form where they don't have to apply for a new license. If there is a change of ownership of 30% or more, that does require a new application. The types of permits the Board of Pharmacy issues include pharmacy permit, wholesale permit, manufacturer's permit, durable medical equipment, and medical gas permits. Please know the rules around generic substitutions, when you're allowed to do this and when you're not allowed to do it. Notifications to the Board of Pharmacy. Pharmacist name change, change of name or address, 10 days. This includes technicians as well. Pharmacist name of change of employment, again, it includes technicians, 10 days. Pharmacist change of residency status, which means are they lawfully allowed to be in this country or not? And if that status has changed, they must inform the board immediately. Notifications to the Board of Pharmacy, pharmacy permanent closing, 14 days, pharmacy change of ownership, new application needed before process can proceed. Pharmacy change of location or name, new application needed before processing, and that has changed, as indicated earlier. They just have to fill out a change of location application on our website. Change of PIC, notifying the board immediately. Pharmacy technician training program. Before employing a pharmacy technician or a technician trainee, a pharmacy must develop and implement policy procedures and create a training program. Additional offsite training of a pharmacy technician is permitted. A pharmacy or PIC must develop and implement a pharmacy technician training program. Technician training program must include the following training guides. So define a specific task a pharmacy technician trainee is expected to perform. Specify how and when the pharmacist in charge will access the pharmacy technician training competency and address the technician policy and procedures. Pharmacists in charge shall document a pharmacy technician training progress throughout the training program, maintain documentation, and make it available to board inspectors upon request. The difference between a pharmacy technician and a trainee is that a pharmacy technician trainee cannot compound medications, nor they cannot operate a remote dispensing site pharmacy or remote hospital site pharmacy. These are tasks authorized by pharmacy technicians. Deviation from rules, display of license/permit. So the board has statutes and rules, and there is a provision in the statute that allows the board to deviate from Modernization of Practice Act, either through experimentation or technology-based. One of those criteria have to be met for the board to deviate. The board cannot deviate from federal rules, however. Display of a pharmacist license, please take a look at that, review that for your information. Drug therapy management, extremely critical. It has evolved so much since the time I started practicing. Drug therapy management for patient care, patient best outcome is absolutely critical. Very important that you read rules around drug therapy management and shared services. Shared services is how a pharmacy can share their workload with other pharmacies that may not be as busy to provide the care that the patient needs for the best outcome needed. Drug therapy management is not prescribing. It is where you can make a recommendation to a prescriber based on what you see as far as an interaction, appropriate treatment, appropriate drug, make that request to the prescriber to possibly change treatment. Quality assurance. As you work in a pharmacy, or maybe many of you have, you may have seen errors that have occurred, whether it's directions, whether it's drug, quantity, anything that could happen on a prescription order being dispensed to a patient. Upon identifying a prescription error, it is important to analyze what took place and to document through a quality assurance program that each pharmacy should have in place so that this is mitigated next time you encounter a similar situation. Inventory requirements. There's general requirements. Required inventory is May 1st or upon a change of PIC within 10 days. Prior to closing, 10 days prior notice to the board, and on closing day, you shall do the inventory. Closing a pharmacy. Make sure you inform the board 14 days notice provided to the board in writing of the closing date. Ensure that everything is tidied up, and records are in the right place, organized, ready to go. Inventory is ready to take place when you close. Reuse and return of drugs. Destruction of stock drugs, how to handle that, how to document that. Stock control substances, return of prescription drugs. Unlawful to accept prescription drugs that have been dispensed for purposes of resale. Exceptions for certain prescriptions dispensed to nursing home patients. So if a nursing home gets medication and they are in control, if the nurses are in control of that medication, not the patients, they are able to return it back to the pharmacy if it's in a blister pack type scenario, unopened bottles, unopened containers. So there are rules behind what can be returned back to the pharmacy for redistribution. But it's the pharmacist's responsibility to ensure that product is in good condition and not adulterated prior to dispensing that medication again to somebody else. Once the end user, the patient, gets control of that medication for their own use, for self-administration, that medication cannot be brought back to the pharmacy and absolutely not brought back to the pharmacy for resale. But important to know, if you're not allowed to accept it and you don't accept it back in the pharmacy, you already eliminate the opportunity to resale it. So please keep that in mind. What are requirements for a prescription? Please read that, understand it. Prescription orders and what's required to be on a prescription is itemized on the same list, R423-407. So please take a look at that. RX transfers. Who's allowed to do RX transfers? Pharmacist to pharmacist, pharmacist to intern, intern to pharmacist, intern to intern. Our technicians allowed to do it, and so forth. So again, please review that. More transfer rules. Compounding. The hottest topic right now across the country, most controversial, is compounding. Compounding is any compounded drug is not an FDA approved drug. APIs, though, the material needed to make the compounded drugs, are approved by the FDA. And if it's not on the FDA approval list, that powder, that substance, cannot be compounded, as it's not on their list. If it's not on their list, it's not able to be compounded. So please review the federal code on what is on the compounding list, what's not on the compounding list. USP has a great outline of 795, 797, 800 that is coming out. So please be aware of that. How to garb up when you compound, proper procedures on garbing, proper procedures on airflow in a pharmacy in a compounding area is important to know. So take a look at USP, take a look at the federal code on compounding. What is required in a pharmacy? Reference materials, compounding equipment, hot, cold water, stuff like that. Please take a look at that to be able to function as a full pharmacy. Infusion Pharmacy is another hot topic that's across the country right now. There's pop-up clinics that are coming up. There are mobile units that are popping up. And infusion is obviously can be high risk compounding. And so be aware of what high risk compounding rules are and how to make a safe infusion compounded product. So ensure that you're able to understand and know the requirements on what is needed to make a safe compounded product for infusion. Institutional pharmacy. Another word for institutional pharmacy is hospital pharmacy. ARS 32-1934, A.A.C. R423-651, and 6660 spells out what a hospital pharmacy's responsibility is. When a pharmacy is closed, hospital pharmacy is closed, is someone allowed to enter the pharmacy to get a medication that's absolutely needed for a patient? We need to understand the rules on that. The answer is yes, but please take a look at it to see what needs to be documented and what the responsibility of a pharmacist is upon opening that pharmacy back up. Again, more reference material needed to operate a hospital pharmacy. What is required, what is not required. Laws affecting non-licensed or non-permitted agencies. So again, as stated earlier, the use of the word drug, pharmacy, drugstore, drug shop, apothecary, any word indicating that there may be a pharmacy or pharmacy services provided in that location is against the law. Treatment of rehabilitation program, substance use disorder program of Arizona. So the Arizona Board of Pharmacy has two partnerships out there, the PAPA program and Community Bridges. And as we identify folks in the practice of pharmacy, whether it's a pharmacist, intern, or technicians or technician trainees, the board does offer the opportunity for those individuals to seek help prior to taking any action against their license. There is some action taken, but the license is not revoked or surrendered. The individuals have an opportunity to retain their license pursuant that they participate in a substance use program, and so forth. For more details, you may want to take a look at history or some of our complaints that the board has received regarding how they mitigate some of those concerns. Immunizations is another one to get educated on. What the age requirements are, what are you allowed to immunize and what are you not allowed to, what can you immunize using a standing order, and what do you need an actual prescription for. And I'll give you an example. Yellow fever, vaccine against yellow fever does require a prescription pursuant to DHS regulations. And then of course, flu and pneumonia does not require a prescription, but is able to be given by a pharmacist or intern pursuant to a standing order and protocols. Over the last 3 years, the federal government has put into place a health emergency. And with that health emergency, allowed the pharmacists and pharmacy interns and technicians to do certain things without the state necessarily approving them to do it. The Federal PrEP Act and immunizations allowed technicians to give immunizations for COVID and flu immunizations as well. The PrEP Act is still in place today, but it's not in the Arizona statutes or rules. So if you're asked a question about can a technician give immunizations in the state of Arizona, the answer would be no, because the Federal PrEP Act is a temporary act. And once the health emergency is lifted and the Federal PrEP Act expires, technicians will no longer be allowed to immunize because the Arizona State Board of Pharmacy does not have that in their language to allow technicians to immunize. The Arizona Board of Pharmacy has submitted a rules package to allow that practice upon delegation by a pharmacist, but that has not gone into effect just yet. So please do not be confused with the Federal PrEP Act and the Arizona law. Be careful when you're reading the pharmacy law. Pay special attention to the words shall or may. Shall is that you need to do something. May is that you could do something. Questions to review. Who can transfer non-controlled medications? Who can transfer controlled medications? Can a nurse enter a hospital pharmacy when a pharmacy is closed? How long can a hospital pharmacy remain closed? Under what circumstances can you transfer a C2 prescription? The prescriber phones in a prescription. To your pharmacy for blood pressure medications. You do not have it in stock. Can you transfer that prescription to another pharmacy? Same situation as the question above, but the medication is lorazepam. Pharmacy technician may ask the patient on their new medication if the patient had any questions. So these are questions for you to ponder and think about and come up with your answers. I thank you for listening to this presentation. Here's my email information and my cell phone. I know this is a nervous time of the year for you guys as you're almost across the finish line. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to email me. There's a lot of you out there, so it may take me a little time to get back to you. If it's an urgent matter, please do not hesitate to call my cell phone number, 602-694-1300. In an event you have questions. Again, congratulations to you. You're almost there at the finish line. Just a little bit further. Keep going at it strong and finish strong. And I look forward to being your peer. Thank you.